every single general manager who has been there can tell you how difficult it is because of just what you said. An impetuous owner who is prone to change his mind, who is demanding, who has a lot of qualities that you wouldn't want in any boss.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to do today with FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal. Here's the inside scoop. Ken, good to see you and great work yesterday reporting on the story of what happened with the Mariners and talking about it also on Fair Territory. So I'm just going to open it up to you and just kind of go through, what happened yesterday and, your take on the Mariners making this move to fire Scott Servais at this point in the season.
Well, Scott, I heard early in the morning that this was happening and proceeded to go about my reporting process. And I'm not going to go into details on exactly what I did, who I talked to, of course. I was surprised that it came out that Scott Servais learned this from essentially our reporting, and that was uncomfortable for me. It was awkward. I was not happy about it. Of course, I'm just a reporter. Scott is the manager who had to deal with this, and it's infinite times worse for him. That said, I felt I was doing my job, and I just went about doing my job as I normally would. And again, it's never a good thing when a manager learns the news this way, but I was following my process, doing what I do, and that is how it turned out, unfortunately. As for the news itself, I can't say I was surprised because the day before, when I had written that column about the Mariners and I asked Jerry Dipoto, president of baseball operations, about Scott Servais, and I asked specifically, do you think a new voice might be necessary? And his quote was something along the lines of, we're going to look at everything. He did not do what heads of baseball operations normally do in that situation, which is to say, I'm not going to discuss that right now. That's not an issue right now. He did not certainly give him a vote of confidence. And at that point, I thought it was actually possible that would happen before the end of the season. And I go back to 2008. Ned Yost was fired by the Brewers on September 15th. If you remember, he was replaced by Dale Swain. They were in jeopardy of losing a wild card spot, I believe, and they eventually got it. And these things do happen, and it seemed to me this was kind of a similar circumstance in that the team was maybe in need of a last-ditch attempt to save the season. And that's what this is, by going to Dan Wilson. There's no question about it. It is a last-ditch attempt, and whether it works or not remains to be seen. Whether there are larger problems is certainly a fair question. And Dipoto, when I asked him if he felt responsible, he said very. And he clearly is responsible. He's the head of baseball operations. But as you guys mentioned in the last segment, this is a talented group. This is a group with an amazing pitching staff. Their playoff odds are low right now, I believe in the 10% range. I don't expect them to make the playoffs, but this was a shot to take advantage of what they have. And keep in mind, it is really rare what they have. To have a pitching staff that has stayed healthy for the entire season, I'm talking about the rotation specifically, because they've had injuries in the bullpen. But to have a rotation this good and this healthy, this is what I wrote about the other day. This is an all-time waste. And what they're trying to do, it seems to me, is prevent that from happening.
Ken, is this the worst communication you've ever heard of from a manager, GM, organizational standpoint? Because to me, this is embarrassing. If I'm Jerry Dipoto, I'm the Mariners organization, I'm embarrassed that he found out through your reporting. This is something that someone obviously leaked. I'm not asking for your sources. Everyone has their sources. But this seems to be an ongoing thing in this organization, whether it's, they say one thing, other people tell other outlets and us on this show different things. So is this just an organizational problem? And again, is this the worst one you've ever heard of? Because I've heard of managers getting fired, but the GM calls them first thing in the morning and says, hey, we're going to have a meeting. You're going to be let go. And at least he knows. But he found out on social media. That can't happen.
I would agree with that, AJ. I can't say that I know it was the worst ever because it's kind of a quick thing to answer, and I would have to go back through history to really give an accurate answer.
Now, Ken.
No, but I will say this. When I heard what Cameron Maben said yesterday on our show about the lack of communication, that is not the first time I've heard that. And that goes from Servais to the players. And I've also heard that while Dipoto and Servais were essentially joined at the hip for many years, remember, they came in together. Dipoto at the end of 15, he hired Servais. Servais was the manager since 2016. they were essentially joined at the hip. But at this point, it seems that clearly their relationship, it would seem, is not as good or was not as good. And for whatever reason, Jerry Dipoto felt that this move had to be made at this time. And as for the communication of it, I can't speak to that. I don't know what has been going on between those two. And I don't know that this particular example is indicative of anything going on in the front office, between the front office and the manager and the coaches, and the manager, the coaches, and the players. These are all different kinds of communication. But at the same time, all of these questions that are being asked are fair questions in the wake of what happened.
Other times when managers are fired, getting close to the playoffs, teams that are on the fringe of making the playoffs or not, and not like a White Sox situation where they had no chance. Some of those times that I know of, because I know the people that were in those situations, it was player driven. Is there any indication that this is something that a Cal Raleigh, a Julio, that J.P. Crawford, the leaders in that clubhouse or the pitchers kind of, went to Jerry or went to somebody to maybe move this along?
I don't know the answer to that, Eric, and it's certainly a good question because at times that does happen. We all know that, right? But Jerry Dipoto, as president of baseball operations, it seems to me operates in an independent fashion. And you just saw Scott just put up that tweet from Kyle Seager, or that comment from Kyle Seager years ago, in which he said Jerry Dipoto didn't communicate with him at all. And he, of course, was a franchise player at the time. So I don't know that the communication between the players and Dipoto is that good where they went to him and said, listen, this has to happen. If anything, you heard that the clubhouse was pretty good and things were going okay despite the losing. Obviously, when there is losing and the way that they were losing is extremely frustrating. And that's natural in any sport, baseball in particular, given the length of the season. But I don't know that this was a mutiny of any sort. In fact, I would be surprised if it was. It seems to me this was a Dipoto decision, an organizational decision that, of course, is led by Jerry Dipoto.
All right, so Ken, more news in the division yesterday. The Angels sign a pending free agent, Perry Minasian, to an extension through 2026. He was in lame duck status. My take yesterday was I'm just as surprised that Perry decided to stay because of the difficulty of that job from what I always hear, working under ownership that has this helicopter approach. So what was your take of him staying there, and if you think that leads to changes for the Angels, because the results have still been bad during his tenure as well?
Hey, FT fam, it's Alana Rizzo. I can't stop talking about Vuori. Vuori is perfect if you are sick and tired of traditional old workout gear. I wear Vuori in all settings, not just in the gym, because honestly, it's comfier than whatever you're currently wearing. No joke. I'm wearing Vuori daily leggings right now. They're high-waisted with the drawstring and cuffed ankles. They look good and they feel great. You're going to love them. Vuori is an investment in your happiness. For our listeners, they are offering 20% off your first purchase. Get yourself some of the most comfortable and versatile clothing on the planet at vuori.com/foul. That's VUORI.com/foul. Not only will you receive 20% off your first purchase, but enjoy free shipping on any U.S. orders over $75 and free returns. Go to vuori.com/foul and discover the versatility of Vuori clothing.
I would say my first reaction was surprise, because with Artie Moreno, you never know what is going to happen. And if anything, you would think he's going to be impatient and say this isn't working or whatever, because the record is what it is. They've fallen behind the A's in the American League West. It's a dismal season. And yet, in many ways, they are coming along. And if you look at their up-the-middle players right now, Zach Neto at shortstop, Logan O'Hoppe behind the plate, and they've got a kid coming at second base who is likely to get promoted in the next week or two. They just drafted. They are forming a group of intriguing young players. I would include Shanuel in that. I would include Ben Joyce in that. Maybe Soriano, who's come along this year. They have the core of something that they're building, and it's largely happened under Minasian. So it seems to me that he actually deserves the chance to continue. Now, you ask whether he would stay on his own volition? Would he just prefer to walk out? Scott, as difficult as that job is, and every single general manager who has been there can tell you how difficult it is because of just what you said. An impetuous owner who is prone to change his mind, who is demanding, who has a lot of qualities that you wouldn't want in any boss. But that job is still one of 30. And Perry Minasian has done some things to lay groundwork for the future, including the hiring of Ron Washington. So he, I would expect, would want to see that through. And now he gets 2 more years. And obviously, he is well aware of the obstacles in place. As our Sam Blum wrote today, they kind of operate like a small market team. If you take away Trout and Rendon, their payroll is a small market payroll. He knows about that. He knows it might not change. He knows the owner is going to be the owner, and yet he wants to see it through. And there are some good things happening there. Might not be obvious, and certainly it's not obvious by their record, but if you watch them day to day, if you follow them, they've got some good things happening. I would include Joe Adell and Mickey Moniak in that. There are players there, and there are more coming. So it's going to be really interesting to see how in the future they progress.
All right, you just said Christian Moore is going to get promoted soon. Is that breaking
I
news?
believe
From
Christian
Ken
Moore is going
Rosenthal?
to get promoted soon. Yes,
He's going to be in the big leagues this year.
I believe he is. Hey, AJ, keep in mind they've done this. They did it with
No,
Neto.
I know
He
they do
came
this.
really quickly. They did it with Shanuel. He came right out of the draft like Christian Moore can. So I do expect that, yes, he will be up. He's tearing it up right now in the minor leagues, like crazy tearing it up. So, yeah, I think it's happening.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah. It's a good follow.
Yeah.
That's what they do. That is what they do. All right. I want to take us to one point from yesterday because I know you were covering the Orioles and Astros. Ken, I think this one snuck under the radar. We didn't cover it yet. I think it broke after the show, but Trevor Rogers got optioned. You know, we were talking to Jake Mintz on the show yesterday, who covers or follows the Orioles very closely and was quite, you know, even from like a fan perspective, bothered that they went the Rogers route over more heavily pursuing someone like Tanner Scott. So now looking back here with this plus Eflin on the IL, what's the vibe over there with the pitching?
They're concerned, to say the least. And as for getting Trevor Rogers over Tanner Scott, it's 2 years more control of Trevor Rogers, whereas Tanner Scott is a potential free agent. Now, there's no question who is the better player for right now. It's Tanner Scott. And he's doing it in San Diego and doing really well. Trevor Rogers, I don't know if he'll ever get back to where he was early in his career, and it's going to be something of a project for them. But at the deadline, they needed controllable starters. Remember, Burns is a free agent, probably not coming back. John Means, season-ending surgery, free agent, probably not coming back. Bradish won't be back this year, not till probably midseason next year. They have to get some more pitching in place. So that was the idea behind Eflin, who has another year, and Trevor Rogers, who has 2 more. I had no problem with that, and in the circumstance that they're in, Trevor Rogers has options. They need bullpen coverage right now. They're kind of scrambling. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out for them. Because I mentioned last night at the end of the broadcast, and it was a 6-0 game. I don't know a lot of people that might have been watching. But it's not just the pitching that is troubling that organization right now. They're not really hitting in the way they were earlier in the season. They've got several guys slumping. Rushman is one of them. And in their present circumstance, they need to outscore some people because they're not going to outpitch some people. They're completely unsettled in the back end of their bullpen. They don't really know who their closer is right now after Sir Anthony Dominguez gave up the 2 walk-offs in Citi Field this week. So it's interesting to see a team this good having these different crises erupt, but that is what's happening. And they're not alone. There are a number of teams. We can go right down the line, right, that have different particular problems. And you look at them and you say, how are they going to survive this? And it's a fair question.
All right, Ken. We also had a retirement the other day named Joey Votto. And people are saying, and listen, Joey was a great player. He was a really great player. But people are saying he's a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. And then I saw this tweet today. I don't know if you can see the screen, but it compares him to some other first basemen that have numbers similar, if not better. None of them are in the Hall of Fame, including Keith Hernandez, John Olerud, Don Mattingly, Will Clark. There's a whole slew of them. Now, the only thing Votto has him in a lot of, here you go. Oh, Carlos Delgado is WAR, right? He has WAR and OBP. And then the rest of it is, you know, someone leading this, someone leading this. And a lot of these guys, if you can read it, Delgado, John Olerud, 1 year on the ballot. You know, the other one never got over 30%. So why is Joey Votto such a surefire Hall of Famer? He never won a championship. Heck, he never even won a Silver Slugger. I won one of those. Those aren't hard to win. I don't understand. Like, I mean, listen, he was a great player, but why is he? Because he's funny in the media and he's quirky, and because he walked a lot. Like, I guarantee if you would have told Don Mattingly walk more, or Will Clark, you need to walk more, it'll get your WAR up and your OPS plus up, they would have done it. But that wasn't the way the game was played. So because he walked more, he's a surefire Hall of Famer?
AJ, first of all, I agree with that in that those players played in a different era and the expectations were different. I always think of the same thing with Willie Mays. Could Willie Mays have gone 40-40 if 40-40 was a thing? Absolutely, he could have done that. So there's a certain truth to that. Now, the difference with Votto, and I couldn't see all of those numbers, but I'll talk a little bit about this. The difference with Votto is he was an on-base leader in his league 7 times. Also an MVP, a guy who kind of was a poster child for this new era of baseball in which patience became a greater virtue than before. I don't believe it's the media that's going to drive this as far as his media personality or anything like that. Keith Hernandez had a great personality. And at the same time, it's interesting because a friend of mine called me yesterday, and AJ, it's a guy who's a former player like you. And he said, hey, what is all the big deal about Joey Votto? Look at Lance Berkman. Lance Berkman's numbers are almost identical to Votto's, and it's true, including on base percentage. It's very comparable, and OPS plus, which is a measure we use now, right? It's park adjusted, it's era adjusted. It normalizes a player's statistics against the era and the parks that he has played in. His OPS plus is, I believe, the exact same as Votto's, and I don't know that any of us really think of Lance Berkman as a first ballot Hall of Famer. So this is definitely worthy of consideration, worthy of debate. Jason Stark has written, as he always does, quite eloquently about this, and he points out that Votto has done things that many, many other players have not. I'll have to look at it closer, but my instinct is, yes, he's first ballot.
Okay, that's fine. Now, you know what that gets you, Ken, by you saying that on the show. You're my dork of the week, dork! Because it wasn't fair what you did to me, because you're just jealous because you would have to go in the mini wiener sausage and I went in the full-size sausage, okay? So don't name me dork of the week, and I'm proud that I'm the 2-time winner of dork of the week, because that is an honor that I wear with pride, and that alone, Ken, should have got me your Hall of Fame vote.
Well, AJ, do you wear with pride that you're the only multiple winner along with A's owner John Fisher? I don't know that that's something to be proud of, but that's where you are, man.
I have no idea what you said, Ken. I lost my audio, so whatever you said,
No.
it didn't even matter.
Wow.
It didn't matter.
That's even better.
Wow.
That is even better.
Would you like me to repeat it? I could
No.
easily repeat it. It was short. It was
What
quick.
did it say? You're right. I'm
What I
wrong.
said was that if you really want to be proud of being a multiple winner, you should know the other multiple winner, the only other multiple winner, is A's owner John Fisher. And if that's the company you want to keep, hey, man, have at it.
Hey, if I'm a billionaire like John Fisher and I can sell my team for a couple $1 billion, bring it on, Ken. Bring it on, buddy.
I definitely would rather have AJ running the A's. So, Ken, this was great. Yes, very thorough combo here. We'll talk to you next week, and we'll see you on Fair Territory Monday.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. FD Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal, host of Fair Territory as well. Make sure you go check that show out, please. Go give it a little rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your pods. Give it a little search.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.